In 1938, an American geologist named Max Steinicke drilled a well in the Saudi Arabian desert. Oil erupted from the ground, not a small amount, enough to power a nation. The land beneath was worthless without the drilling knowledge and capital. The geologist brought both. Saudi Arabia had the oil, America had the technology and money. The Standard Oil Company of California bought the concession rights. They created the California Arabian Standard Oil Company, CASOC. In 1944, the name changed to the Arabian American Oil Company, Aramco. Following full Saudi ownership and a royal decree in 1988, the name changed again, Saudi Aramco. By 2024, Saudi Aramco is worth $2 trillion. The Saudi government owns 98% of the company. But the company doesn't own Saudi Arabia. The company and Saudi Arabia are identical. They're the same entity wearing different uniforms. You cannot distinguish between the government and the corporation. The records show this structure was designed in 1945 when President Franklin Roosevelt met King Ibn Saud on an American ship, the USS Quincy, anchored in the Great Bitter Lake near the Suez Canal. At that meeting, Roosevelt traded American military protection for Saudi oil access. That trade created a 79-year arrangement where the United States guaranteed Saudi Arabia's security. In exchange, Saudi Arabia kept oil flowing. The company was the mechanism that executed the arrangement. This is the Gilded Archives, where the most sophisticated consolidations look like free trade agreements because the consolidation is buried inside geopolitical structure. The records show a system that started in 1933 when Standard Oil of California signed a 60-year concession agreement with Saudi Arabia. Standard Oil received the right to drill for oil on Saudi Arabian territory. Saudi Arabia received royalties. The arrangement was straightforward. A corporation controlled by American shareholders would extract oil. The Saudi government would receive payments. Standard Oil would profit from the difference between extraction cost and selling price. This was colonial extraction. It looked like a business deal. It was an empire relationship. The architecture has 3 layers. First, ownership and control. Standard Oil of California didn't own the oil in the ground. The Saudi government owned it. But Saudi Arabia didn't have the drilling technology or capital to extract it. Standard Oil had both. Standard Oil could determine extraction rates, processing methods, and export volumes. Saudi Arabia received royalties based on volume extracted. The structure created an incentive misalignment. Standard Oil wanted to maximize extraction to maximize profit. Saudi Arabia wanted to maximize long-term resource value. Those interests were opposed. The contract between them resolved the opposition by giving Standard Oil control. Saudi Arabia received payment, Standard Oil received power. By 1960, this structure had created resentment across the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, and Venezuela formed OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC's mandate was to reclaim control of oil pricing and production from the Western corporations, extracting it. For the first time, oil-producing nations could coordinate. They could refuse to sell below a certain price. They could reduce production to maintain price. They could use oil as a political weapon. In 1973, OPEC demonstrated this power. Arab states embargoed oil sales to America in response to American military support for Israel. Oil prices quintupled. The embargo lasted 5 months. The Western world experienced energy scarcity. The embargo ended when America negotiated with Saudi Arabia, separately from OPEC. America traded continued military protection for a guarantee that Saudi Arabia would keep oil flowing to America. The embargo failed because the enforcer broke ranks. That 1973 negotiation created the modern structure. Through the 1974 U.S.-Saudi Joint Commission on Economic Cooperation, Saudi Arabia would maintain stable oil production at stable prices and price all oil exports in U.S. dollars. Additionally, Saudi Arabia agreed to invest its surplus oil proceeds into U.S. Treasury bonds. In exchange, America would guarantee Saudi Arabia's security. This petrodollar system fused the two economies. The relationship became formal in 1945, but was renewed and deepened in 1973 to 1974 through this mechanism. The arrangement survived the Cold War, the Gulf War, the Iraq War, and the War on Terror. It survived the Saudi-led humanitarian crisis in Yemen, where American military support enabled Saudi bombing campaigns. It survived the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The arrangement persists because both sides benefit. America gets stable energy access and demand for U.S. dollars. Saudi Arabia gets military protection from regional threats. The company executing this arrangement is Saudi Aramco. The data reveals the structure with precision. Saudi Aramco extracts approximately 10 million barrels of oil per day. That's roughly 3.65 billion barrels annually. At current prices, that's approximately $365 billion in annual revenue. Saudi Aramco's profit margins fluctuate significantly with global oil prices, but are substantial. In 2022, Saudi Aramco reported record net income of $161.1 billion. In 2023, net income was $121.3 billion. The Saudi government, which owns 98% of the company, receives the vast majority of these profits. Additionally, Saudi Arabia collects taxes and fees on the company's operations. Total government revenue from oil is approximately 40% of the Saudi national budget. Without Aramco, the Saudi government cannot function. Without the Saudi government's permission, Aramco cannot operate. They are inseparable. The comparison to historical monopoly reveals the mechanism. Standard Oil's consolidation required owning the oil in the ground, and the drilling rights, and the processing facilities, and the transportation networks. Rockefeller owned all layers. He consolidated them into one company. The monopoly was visible. Saudi Aramco's consolidation is less visible. The Saudi government owns the oil in the ground. Aramco owns the drilling rights and processing facilities and transportation networks. But Aramco is majority owned by the Saudi government. The structure is so integrated that distinguishing between government control and corporate control becomes impossible. Is Aramco a company that the government owns, or is Aramco the mechanism through which the government controls its own resources? The answer is both. The government controls the company. The company controls the oil. The government controls the company through the company. It's consolidated into a single entity wearing a corporate uniform. By 1980, Aramco faced a choice. OPEC had demonstrated that oil-producing nations could reclaim control from Western corporations. Saudi Arabia could nationalize Aramco entirely, seize the company, pay compensation, run it as a state-owned enterprise, or Saudi Arabia could keep the existing arrangement, but the arrangement was profitable. America guaranteed security. The Western world needed Saudi oil. Saudi Arabia chose to keep the arrangement, but Saudi Arabia also restructured it. In 1973, Saudi Arabia acquired a 25% stake in Aramco. In 1974, this increased to 60%. By 1980, the Saudi government reached 100% ownership of the company's assets and operations, retroactive to 1976. The company remained called Aramco and later adopted the name Saudi Aramco in 1988. The structure appeared to change. The mechanism remained identical. Aramco still extracted oil. Saudi Arabia still received government revenue. America still guaranteed security. The consolidation was now complete within Saudi Arabia. The government didn't need to negotiate with Western shareholders. The government controlled Aramco directly, but Aramco's incentive structure didn't change. Aramco still wanted to maximize extraction. The Saudi government still needed the revenue. The arrangement still extracted maximum value from finite resources. The architect of this structure was John J. McCloy. In 1945, McCloy was the U.S. Assistant Secretary of War and advised President Roosevelt on the oil arrangement with Saudi Arabia. Later, in 1953, McCloy became chairman of Chase National Bank, later Chase Manhattan Bank. McCloy understood something that most economists didn't. The power of a nation wasn't just military strength. Power required energy. Energy required control of supply sources. The oil arrangement with Saudi Arabia gave America access to the world's largest proven oil reserves. The arrangement was structured to look like a commercial agreement between corporations. It was actually a geopolitical arrangement where America traded military protection for energy security. McCloy's innovation wasn't commercial, it was architectural. He designed a structure where the corporation executed geopolitical strategy. The Saudi government appeared to control the company. The company appeared to be a normal corporation. But the relationship was actually a mechanism for American energy security. Every time you fill a car with gasoline, you're engaging with this mechanism. The gasoline came from Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco extracted it under a 1933 arrangement that was restructured in 1945, renewed in 1973, formalized through the Petrodollar system in 1974, and consolidated with full Saudi ownership in 1980. The arrangement is 91 years old. The price you paid for the gasoline reflects the cost of extraction plus the profit margin. But the profit margin is partly governmental revenue. The Saudi government uses that revenue to fund its security apparatus, its patronage networks, and its state institutions. Without American military protection, the Saudi government would need a larger military. Without a larger military, the Saudi government could extract less oil while maintaining security. The arrangement creates an extraction optimization that benefits America through stable energy prices and dollar demand, and Saudi Arabia through maintained security. You experience the benefit as gasoline. You don't experience the 91-year arrangement that made it possible. But there's a second layer the records reveal. If Saudi Arabia wanted to reduce extraction to preserve oil for future generations, Saudi Arabia would need to find alternative revenue sources. The Saudi government is financially dependent on oil revenue. Without it, the government collapses. The arrangement has created structural dependency. The Saudi government cannot reduce extraction because the government needs the revenue. The people of Saudi Arabia cannot demand lower extraction because reducing extraction would collapse their government. The consolidation has locked Saudi Arabia into permanent maximum extraction. The resource is finite. The extraction rate is maximum. The arrangement guarantees that the Saudi people will experience resource depletion within their lifetimes. We are at stage 4 of the oil consolidation pattern. Stage 1 was the initial drilling and concession in 1938. Stage 2 was the formal geopolitical arrangement in 1945. Stage 3 was the OPEC challenge in 1960 to 1973, and the creation of the Petrodollar system in 1974. Stage 4, where we are now, is the formalization of complete government consolidation in 1980. The Saudi government now owns Aramco entirely, but the company still operates under the same structure. Extract maximum oil, sell to Western markets. Maintain American alliance. Stage 5, which will come, is the obsolescence crisis. Oil demand will decline as renewable energy increases. Saudi Arabia will face a revenue cliff. The arrangement assumed permanent oil demand. When demand declines, the arrangement breaks. The Saudi government will need alternative revenue sources. The records show what comes next. Stage 6 is the attempt to diversify. Saudi Arabia is investing in solar energy, manufacturing, tourism. These investments are intended to reduce dependency on oil, but they require capital. Oil revenue funds them. The circular dependency persists until oil demand declines so far that the revenue model breaks entirely. The 3 paths forward require acknowledging the arrangement's completeness. First, accept the arrangement. America has stable energy access because Saudi Arabia extracts maximum oil. Saudi Arabia maintains security because America guarantees it. The arrangement is stable and beneficial for both parties. The cost is extraction of Saudi Arabia's finite resource at maximum rate. The cost is locked into permanent financial dependency for the Saudi government. The cost is locked into permanent maximum extraction for the Saudi people. Accepting this means recognizing that geopolitical arrangements sometimes require resource extraction. Most people would choose stable energy prices if offered explicitly. Most don't realize that choice requires permanent maximum extraction of another nation's resources because the arrangement is invisible. Second, resist through alternative energy. Renewable energy reduces oil demand. Reduced demand means Saudi Arabia extracts less. Less extraction means the arrangement becomes less important. This is available in wealthy nations that can afford renewable infrastructure. It's not available in poor nations dependent on oil imports. The arrangement creates a 2-tier system where wealthy nations can escape energy dependency and poor nations are locked in. Third, position by understanding that consolidations require time to break. The oil arrangement is 91 years old. It will persist for at least 15 to 20 more years until oil demand declines enough to threaten the model. Positioning within consolidation means understanding which arrangements are approaching obsolescence and which are stable. Oil consolidation is approaching obsolescence. Rare earth mineral consolidation is entering its growth phase. Semiconductor consolidation is at maximum power. Positioning means identifying the consolidation stage and acting accordingly. The deeper protection lies in what the archives show always survives consolidation: alternative energy development. When oil consolidation existed, coal alternatives emerged. When coal consolidation existed, oil alternatives emerged. When oil consolidation faces decline, renewable alternatives emerge. The records show this consistently. The consolidation doesn't prevent the alternative. The consolidation delays it. Every consolidation creates the incentive for alternatives to develop. Eventually, alternatives break the consolidation. Saudi Arabia's consolidation of oil will break, not because it's unjust, but because the alternative, renewable energy, becomes cheaper. The market doesn't enforce justice. The market enforces economics. When renewable energy is cheaper than oil, oil consolidation loses power. That threshold is approaching. By 2035, renewable energy will be cheaper than oil in 70% of markets. By 2040, renewable energy will be cheaper in 90% of markets. The consolidation will persist in the remaining 10%, but the power will be broken. The pattern says what comes next. By 2035, Saudi Arabia will acknowledge that oil demand is declining. The Saudi government will accelerate its diversification investments. The attempt will fail because the capital available for diversification is insufficient. A portion of oil revenue must be saved. The government will need to choose between maintaining current government spending and preserving capital for the post-oil era. The choice will be political. The choice will create instability. By 2045, if renewable energy has declined oil demand enough, the arrangement with America will begin to break. America will need Saudi oil less. Saudi Arabia will need American protection more. The balance will shift. The relationship may persist, but the foundation will be eroded. The current consolidation is approaching its final stage. You fill your car with gasoline made from Saudi oil extracted under a 91-year arrangement. The arrangement is invisible to you. You experience the price and the convenience. You don't experience the 91-year relationship that made it possible. You don't experience the structural dependency locked into the Saudi government. You don't experience the extraction of a finite resource at maximum rate. You experience gasoline. The consolidation worked perfectly. It made itself invisible. It made its benefits visible. It locked the cost into an entire nation while spreading the benefit across a global market. When the arrangement eventually breaks, when oil demand declines far enough, you will shift to renewable energy. You will experience that as progress. The Saudi government will experience it as collapse. The consolidation will have executed its full cycle from arrangement to obsolescence. The records already show this progression. We're watching it unfold in real time. If this pattern revealed something you'd never seen before, subscribe to the Gilded Archives. History's records reveal how geopolitical consolidations work. Saudi Aramco isn't unique. It's one iteration of a pattern that repeats across energy, minerals, and agricultural commodities. Understanding it allows you to see the pattern in the next consolidation, the next arrangement between nations and corporations, the next finite resource being extracted at maximum rate. The records are specific. The mechanism repeats. The outcomes are predictable. We're just watching it unfold.